Welcome back to another episode of Important Miscellaneous Talks. I'm your host, Glassy Crossfield, and we are changing the world one podcast at a time. And today we have the world-renowned Eric Stone here with us. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, man. Eric Stone here. Activist. Pretty much. That's pretty much it. That's all I am.
So, talk about some of your recent adventures across the country.
Yeah. It's so I started a road trip, as you know, from going from New York to I flew over to LA to meet with a friend. To basically drive around the country and go to like sundown towns, meet with KKK leaders and cops and politicians and etc. Right. Um, and it started out great. Um, and my friend, he's young, he's a kid. I've known him for years, but he's never been outside of LA.
Mm.
And so nothing against him in any kind of way. And so it started out great, and we were going to these towns, and on the way we picked up another guy that he's been friends with for I don't know how many years. And we got direction to go to some towns in the neighborhood in Northern California. When we get there, the town that everybody referred us to, it wasn't what we expected, because everybody made it seem like it was a really bad town. It was like racist and this and that and blah, blah, blah. Turns out it wasn't. They were like the most welcoming people ever, right? And there was American flags, everything and all that. But their problem wasn't with blacks or Mexicans or Latinos in any kind of matter. Their problem was with white people, which they're like the black guys. They're not the causing the problem here. It's the white guys across the tracks who are bringing all the drugs. And so I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then the guy was like, yeah, I'm also pro, like Roe v. Wade was a waste of time and they shouldn't be controlling women's bodies like that. And I was just like, I'm in small town USA, right? Like this is the sundown town. What I realized was when we first arrived and we went to go on the 4th of July show and we went to see the fireworks, small little thing, fire truck, and they're shooting off and everything. The fireman said, don't let the cops know what we're doing. Okay, no problem. A little suspicious that the fire department would say that, but like, okay. So then we went to their neighboring town. So that was, I can't think of the name of the city. It's in the documentary, but it starts with a C. But we went to their neighboring town that the police department handles that whole area, called Alturas. In Alturas, it was a completely different story. So when we first drove through the original town, everybody had an American flag. When we go to Alturas, it looks like an old Wild Wild West town with a little modern, government buildings and stuff. Every white person was basically saying how great the place was to live at. Every white person was like, oh, this is a great city. There ain't no racism here, blah, blah, blah. Every person of color, whether they were Latino, Mexican, black, were like, yeah, that's not the case. Scared for their lives. Police have made threats to kill them. A lot of them didn't want to say it on camera. There was one black guy who just didn't give a fuck. And he was new there. He's been there for only like 4 years. He just didn't care anymore. And every single one of them were like living in fear. And a lot of people would be like, well, why don't you just leave? And it's easier said than done, because when you got a business there and you're making money and you got family and you're just kind of like surviving, you kind of just figure out how to, like, we're creatures of survival, right? And they don't got a lot of money to just be able to move to another city like most people. So then when we went to go interview the sheriff, he was in denial of everything, but he had blackface posters He had Trump. Yeah, oh yeah, we got it all in the documentary. Blackface like posters, Trump signs everywhere, Blue Lives Matter, all this shit in his office. And to get the interview alone was a little difficult because they were just not having it. We had to like kind of kiss up to them, and not even kind of. We had to kiss up to them. The moment I left that interview, because I grew up around people like this, I was like, we got to get out of here. Because if we don't, they're going to do something. Like the moment we walked out the sheriff's office and we were back on the street, everybody in the street was staring at us.
Like, get out? Wow.
Yeah. Like literally, like people in the windows staring at us. Like it wasn't like that. We were there all day walking around, all day. It wasn't until late in the afternoon we interviewed the sheriff. All of a sudden, everybody's staring at us. Cop cars are following us, scouting us. I'm like, we got to get the fuck out of here. We got to fill up and just drive. Like, I don't know where the fuck we're going to go, but we got to get the fuck up out of here. And once we drove back through the original town, the first one, we realized, oh, these people ain't putting the American flag up because they're super patriotic and everything. They're doing it for survival. Because these cops control this whole area. And so these people are living in fear. That's why the fire department was like, hey, don't tell the cops that we're doing a fireworks show. And these towns were maybe like 30 minutes apart. That was basically the biggest shock, because the moment we got out, that town that looked all cool and everything became the most disgusting. Like even the views, the mountains and everything. When we were driving there, we're like, this is so beautiful. As we're leaving, we're like, this is the most ugly land that we faced our eyes on. It was disgusting. Wow. So then we work our way up and we go Northern California. Then we go to, I think Portland was next. We did a little bit. No, we did before Portland. We did another town where one of the KKKs originated. And when we were in that town, everybody was acting like, and this town had like a strong historic history of the Klan being there, the Ku Klux Klan being there, like a strong history. And so anytime we would ask anybody about it, oh, I don't know nothing about it. They would dismiss it, and then they wouldn't talk to you. And I mean, everybody, black, white, it didn't matter who it was. Everybody was scared to talk about it, or they know it still goes on and they don't want to talk about it. So we had to figure something out. So as we go back to this coffee shop where we saw one black guy working at the coffee shop, but he was a young kid. He was in his 20s, early 20s. We're like, maybe he might know something, right? You guys, with this energy in this town is weird. And he was like, I don't know much, but my brother does. He works at this restaurant. He works at this time. Go there, talk to him. Cool. We go to the restaurant. We meet with the brother. The brother was scared to tell us anything. But all he told us was the red barn. There's a big red barn with a red house. That's where you need to go. So we're driving around, looking for this red barn. And in this same town, there's like a political store of like pro-Trump, fuck all Democrats store right next to the church. Right?
Wow.
So we drive around and I see this big red building. And I'm like, that has to be fucking it. We go over there. There's a giant red barn in like a little neighborhood where a bunch of houses are.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that's the fucking house. Get the camera, record, but don't look like you're recording, right? I'm gonna go up to the house, and I'm going to, and nobody knows the story yet, by the way, because I haven't told it. I go up to the house. We park down the block, so if we had to book it, they wouldn't know what car we were in. I knock on the door, and there's a screen door and then a big door. Do, 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 do. Nothing. I try again, but this time I just do, do, do. Right? I want fucking answers. Right? I'm crazy like white boy. And next thing I know, I hear just big dogs just going, "Wah!" Boom! They slam into the door. Giant ass dog just slammed into the door, the whole shakes. Not being exaggerated. I'm like, I think we found the house.
Safe to say.
Opens up. Older white guy in his 50s, maybe 60. I think he was in his 60s. Skinhead, tattoos, buff as a motherfucker. I'm like, oh yeah, this is the fucking house. Right? This house looks like it was built in the fucking 30s. Trying to ease hey, I was we're doing a little documentary where college students, and we're doing a little documentary on this, and we saw your house and wanted to get a little history behind the house. We thought it was a really cool house. Oh yeah, this house has a long history and stuff like that. I'm a new owner. I've only been here for a couple of years, such like that. Well, do you know anything about the Klan? I don't know nothing about the Klan. Really, because we're just doing documentaries. We know the Klan's gone. We know they're no longer involved in everything. But like, I go straight to the point. I don't like shortcut anything. Right? I'm just like, fuck it. I don't care. Right? Total denial. He's like, nothing. Well, do you mind if like we just like go in, like have a conversation and talk? And we're just students. That's all we are. We're just film students. We just want to like find out the history of the town, like not to bash anybody or whatever. He's making every excuse in the book. And I keep pushing. He's like, well, I do have one friend. He's been here for a very long time. He's in his 70s. He hangs out where he lives where they used to burn the crosses. I'm like, well, could we meet him? Yeah, I could set up a breakfast tomorrow morning and you can meet the guys. Great, let me get your number. He gives us the address where we're going to go meet. We go to the bar, because it's a bar, and it's skinhead city. Hookers everywhere, drugs. Beer was like $2-3, which was great, so I could drink and not break the bank, and we could tell they didn't want us there. And because one of my friends is Mexican that was with me, native Mexican, and like native Indian and Mexican. And they just were giving him the most ugly looks. And you're not around here kind of thing. You're not from around here. We drink a little bit, have a good time, act like we're like supposed to be there. We're just driving through kind of thing, blah, 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 blah. We show up the next day, go there, film at the restaurant. It's the same guy as yesterday, the skinhead, and then two other older guys. Like one was in his 70s, one was like, I think in his 80s. And they were saying the N-word like it was like cake. It was candy. It was just normal for them. And they were in denial about the Klan whatsoever. And I asked him one question. I said, well, is there a reason why there's not very many black people in this town? And all they did was grin. That's it. They just had a big grin on their face with no comment. And of course, they won't admit to being in the Klan, but you can tell that they were a part of it.
Mm.
And they had no reminiscence whatsoever. And I believe it still exists, but they don't need it as big as they used to need it because they've established their town as being a white town.
Got you. That's a very interesting story, man. Wow. I I hope you get to finish that journey. Why did you originally want to go on this adventure?
Uh, it's just like it's just my passion, man. Like I'm sick of the bullshit. I'm sick of like I come from like a very racist town,
Mm.
and they just have this mindset where they think they're just better than everybody, but they've done nothing to earn that. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So for me, it's like when I was locked up in county in Twin Towers, downtown LA, they lock you up with by race. And I was in one of the most um what you call vulnerable positions because you're in there with people who could have just stole a car to people who have murdered people. And when I was locked up, I was already, when they were transferring something, I already witnessed somebody get murdered
Oh my goodness.
in county. Yeah. So I was like, okay, cool. This is where I'm at. And so when I'm locked up with all these white Nazis in a holding cell with like 20 of us sweating our balls off, um, we were like sardines in a can. But they were all Nazis. And I still, in that moment, had the need to tell them what they're doing is wrong. Their mindset is wrong. And after 24 hours of being locked up in that holding cell before I got transferred to another county, I converted those Nazis
Mm.
to want to remove their Nazi tattoo and make amends to all the people they hurt.
That's dope, man.
Yeah. And so I'm like, if I can do it in the most vulnerable position where these people don't care if they kill me or not because they're already doing life potentially, then I can do it in the fucking streets.
Wow. That's powerful right there, man. What
Mm.
what do you think was the biggest lesson that you learned going on this trip?
80% of Americans are actually in the middle.
What's the middle?
The middle is not the left or the right. You have extremists, right? So you have 80% of Americans who are actually in the middle. If you look at statistics, 80% of Americans want equal pay. 80% of Americans want equal rights. Even when JFK was alive, he had an over 80% approval rating. Only president in the United States who ever had an 80% approval rating, right? Most presidents barely get 40%, maybe to 60, but you don't ever see anything above 60, right? And if a president back in the 50s had an 80% approval rating and he was against segregation, then what's the truth? So what I realized, there's a 20% of America, which are the extremists. 10% of is poor extremists who are just poor and uneducated. And then 10% of it is rich and educated. And they have all the money and the power. The poor and educated is self-explanatory. They're uneducated. They don't got a lot of money. they're entitled because they're Americans and they believe in their traditional values, right? Their traditional ways, what they think America is supposed to be: Christian, white, Confederate, all that bullshit. Then you have the 10% rich who are extremists. So I went to CPAC in Dallas. Trump was there. Major Taylor Greene was there. Ted Cruz was there. Fox News was there. Newsmax was there. Every conservative celebrity politician was there. I go in all suited up, looking fly as fuck as usual, right? Go in, I blend in. And I go to get a media pass. When I go to get a media pass, they're like, sorry, your company's not big enough. Okay, well, I got over 500,000 followers on TikTok. At the time, it was over 500,000. Now I got 600. And they're like, oh, really? And I was like, yeah. They're like, well, maybe we can make this work. I was like, great, cool. They bring the head guy down to, like, give me a pass and blah, 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 blah. I show him my TikTok. He's like, oh, this is great. Yeah, you can get a media pass, no problem. But actually, let me hear what you say in your videos. Also, don't forget, I'm at the conservative convention, right? With Trump and everything. So my videos are not gonna
Resonate.
They're not gonna like that shit. Once they hear it, they're like, well, your videos are more opinion based. And I was like, well, so is Fox News, and they're here. So is Newsmax, and they're fucking here. Fox News literally won a lawsuit basing it that nobody would be dumb enough to believe anything they fucking say in their entertainment company. Well, you don't have cameramen. I can get cameramen. I can make one phone call and get a cameraman. No problem. And they had every excuse in the book. And I said, oh, okay. So what you're doing here is you don't want to get the truth out to people. You want a controlled environment to where you push a certain narrative to keep brainwashing people to believe in what you believe, so you keep all the money, the power, and the control. That's what you're doing. And the Democrats also do this. It's not just conservatives, right? Liberals do this just as well. And those are the extremists in this country. But I believe 80% of this country is actually in the fucking middle. And they're sick of the division in this country. They're sick of racism. They're sick of sexism. They're sick of, like, not being paid what they should be paid. They're sick of it all. But the people that are portrayed on TV are the extremists for the ratings. And so to close it out, when you get somebody who's from the country who doesn't know any black people, and all they see is black people on the news in the major big cities like LA and New York, and they're getting arrested, they're starting violence, that's all they see about black people. Or in the movies or TV shows, they see gangs and thugs and all this stuff, right? Even though we know that's not 99% of black people, right? Yet, when you get people in the city who see the news about people in the country, what do you think? People with missing teeth, and they're fucking their cousin, and it's true to an extent, but that's not the majority. Just like it's not the majority for black people being criminals. And so there's a misconception in this country, and the extremists push a certain narrative to make people believe a certain way. That way they keep all the money, the power, and the control, and they get their votes.
Interesting. So how did you figure out that we're 80% in the middle? Because you just told me kind of an extremist story, which I know is not the only story that you got along the way, but how did you put that together that we're 80% in the middle?
With if you take any data, right? Anything, people that want to work from home, people who think they should have health insurance, people who think that women should have equal pay, those stats always are in the 70, 80%. every single time. Even for abortion rights, women to have abortion rights, 77% of the country thinks women should have the rights to an abortion. That's practically 80% of this country. Kansas, one of the most Republican states, voted to allow women to have abortions. Okay. I'm in a conservative state right now. Most of them are sick of this bullshit. But they don't get their voices heard because their voices don't get seen on the TV and the news. Only the extremist. If you take racism, people are sick of it. Now, what I will say about racism is 80% are tired of it, but also white people are inherently racist without them knowing that they are racist.
I think that's key. I think there's a lot of white people that don't know what they're doing is racist. And I think it's important for a lot more black people to understand that. Not necessarily tolerate it, but understand that to a certain level. I don't think a lot of people wake up and say, hey, I'm gonna, I just wanna speak a little subtle racism in my life today. Like I don't think that's really realistic.
Yeah. And I 100% agree with you. Like I used to grow up, I used to think, the typical make the jokes. Oh, they like watermelon. They can't swim. They can't. It's that do you when you're a child. And so then you grow up thinking this way, not knowing, well, actually, the reason why they like watermelon so much and this and that is because they were profiting off watermelon when they got the freedom. The only seed they could afford was the watermelon seed. And then white people dehumanized them for doing that. And they couldn't swim because they put acid in them. Like all these things that white people aren't taught. Like I'm from Oklahoma. I didn't even know about Black Wall Street. It's not in our history books. They might have updated it now, but not since what, 2017, 2018, when it actually broke news that people didn't know about this. I didn't fucking know about this shit. So white people are taught to think a certain way, which is called the white narrative, which is why they teach us about Robert E. Lee, but not John Brown.
Who's John Brown?
John Brown is a white man who went around killing slave owners and freeing slaves. He basically incited the Civil War.
Wow. He seems like an important figure.
And you know where I learned that from? A black man who was a really good friend of mine. And he basically was one of the many people who encouraged me to do what I do right now. No white person taught me about John Brown because they don't want me to think like the way I do. That's why they'll call me a race traitor, an N-word lover, all this shit.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Do you think you got any closer to your goals with this trip so far?
I think what I've got is I got the attention.
Which is important.
Which is important. What if you Google my name, my full name, Eric Brian Stone, and specifically if you do Eric Brian Stone TikTok, and you scroll down past all the TikTok shit, you're gonna see political forum, an article, and everything of just white people pissed at me, hate my guts. But then you got some who are like, oh, I think Eric would beat Trump in a debate. Oh, I think Eric would win an election. I think Eric should run. Boom. But a lot of them hate my fucking guts. And they always say in these articles, we need to keep an eye on him because he's not going anywhere. There's an article out there that says if anything happens to Eric Stone, are Republicans to blame? Like, that's what I've got from doing all this. And I speak for a lot of Americans who grew up the way they did, because I did. And they may hate me when they see my videos. Shit, my own fucking family doesn't like my fucking videos. But then when they get into an intellectual conversation and go, "Oh, you're not radical. You're not even nothing like your fucking videos." I do that to get your fucking attention,
Mm.
and it works. Once I have your attention, then I can switch you over.
Yeah, I think that's important, man. With any great leader in the history of all time, you need the attention. You need eyes on you. You know, some people might take a more an extremist route, like a Kanye West or a Trump, but
Yeah,
you know, when people like that speak, typically people listen. Maybe
yeah,
not for the best reasons, but at least they're listening. And as long as they're listening, you have a chance to change their mind.
mm-hmm, exactly. And also to note, with that first time when we were at the fireworks show, this is the most important part: is giving the voice to the unheard. And black people feel like they're unheard, and poor white people feel like they're unheard.
Mm.
And when we were in that white town and the fireworks were going off and we were done recording and we were just laying back enjoying the show, we got to eat the barbecue. By the way, the food was fantastic, right? And it took me like I was back home, and I could hear them talking about us in the background. And one lady said they will remember us
That's dope.
because most people go to their towns and try to make them look stupid. We
Mm.
just wanted to hear what they had to say.
You're
Yeah.
doing the Lord's work, Eric. Is there any hope for the future? Because I dream of a world where, where all people are living in somewhat harmony. I know that's a pretty lofty goal, but I do think that it can be somewhat of a reality. Is there any hope for the future?
I think there is. I think in our lifetime we will see it into all this bullshit, right? I'll be an old ass man, maybe, but it will be in our lifetime. And this new generation doesn't tolerate it. Um, they don't care what skin color you are. They need to understand the difference, but they don't care if you are different. And so, with that, we just need to make sure that kids nowadays aren't taught the white narrative that my generation and the generation prior was taught. And if you do that and you get on a platform to where white people specifically not only hear somebody that they can relate to, but have their voice heard as well, you can come to a middle ground where everybody gets along.
Middle ground. I love that.
Mm,
Because that's what I aim to do with a lot of things I do on the podcast is to
mm.
help people empathize with their enemy. I believe if we all had a conversation with our enemy for 30 minutes, we'd realize how much more alike we are than different.
That's it. That's it.
And my final question, if you can go back and do the trip over, what would you do differently?
Um, the problem with the team was finances. And I told them originally, there's no guarantee we're going to make money and we're just going to have to like survive. And and we were selling merch to do that, and my supporters were buying merch to help us. Um, but the guys got tired of camping. They missed being indoors. Um, you know, they me if I was going to do it again, one, I would do it with somebody who can handle that kind of lifestyle,
Mm.
right? I was homeless. I know what it's like. I need somebody who can handle that. Um, and two, I would make sure the camera is rolling the entire fucking time.
Mm.
Because I don't know if you heard about the woman in Portland and all that bullshit. Um,
I knew some of the story.
Yeah, she one way she's two different people on and off camera, and she lied to her audience about the flag, which means she lied to me, which led me to go out there in the first place. She lied about her neighbors. She lied about her town. Um, and then she tried to capitalize off my name. Um, so I would have the camera rolling the entire time. And what I've, not to have my extended answers because you know I like to do that, but okay. Um, what I've noticed is the bigger your name gets, and you're going to eventually get this problem, and I really hope you get it soon because this is why I do your platform. Um, uh, the bigger your name gets, the bigger the target on your back is. Even
Mm,
people that have the same belief system as you, but they're mad that you're in that position and not them. And so they're looking to tear you down so they can get that spot. It's the people that are closest to you that are actually your biggest enemies.
mm. So many bars here, Eric. So many bars. Lord, I pray I get there too, man.
You'll get there. I'm not worried about it.
I appreciate that. It does mean a lot. Thank you. Honestly.
Yeah, 100%, bro.
That is all the time I have for you today, Eric. Thank you so much for taking the time out. I've always learned something new speaking to you, man, and it's always a pleasure.
Right back at you, brother. I'll send me the link and
Oh yeah,
I'll
absolutely.
share this one again.